Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Good morning to all of you. Pranam, welcome. And we are continuing today with our series on radical personalism. Today is class 14, and we are continuing with our sub-series on GURU-TATTVA, fourth meeting on this topic. Today we will be talking about abandoning or unleaving one's guru. That's today's title. Unleaving one's guru. But as usual, a brief recap before from what we saw last Tuesday in our third meeting on GURU-TATTVA about the absolute and relative sides of Sri Guru, where we explained to begin with the importance of making it clear what do we mean by absolute and relative sides every time we talked about that, because there may be different ways of conceiving that. We mentioned how originally these two terms came from Srila Siddhar Maharaj, by him referring as absolute to the principle of samasti, or the agency, so to say, of Sri Guru, and by relative to the principle of Vyasti Guru, or the individual who represents the agent, who represents the agency. But also we mentioned there may be another ways of conceiving absolute and relative sides of the Guru, whether in terms of one Guru, the absolute side, so to say, having different, being appreciated or related to in different ways, the relative, so to say, experience from each particular disciple stance, or especially the main point that we emphasized was, and we unfolded in the class, was that by relative, many times devotees will refer to the humanity, so to say, of the Guru, and by the absolute they will refer to the inner world of bhakti presented in the Guru figure. So we also explain in that connection how on some level at least the relative side of the Guru will generally be speaking about the absolute side, at least on a general rule, so to say. It's not that we can divorce the two of them absolutely, because again, at least in most cases, then we touched upon some exceptions, because the humanity of the Guru is to be integrated with the spirituality. As we mentioned, our Gaudiya project, our goal is the Rasa-lila, where there is the reality there is fully divine but fully human simultaneously. So one thing is not totally divorced from the other. So we as sadhakas, having not reached there yet, we are expected to integrate our humanity, our relative side, with the absolute, so to say. So in one sense, one will be speaking about the other. A guru may be a pure devotee and may have some grumpiness, as we mentioned, so to say, and that's okay on some level as long as it doesn't get in the way of his inner side, so to say. But that's not to speak about the relative side is not an excuse to over-justify these functionalities that need to be addressed. And just saying, it's the relative side, the absolute side is untouched by that. Not in all cases, at least, or not in most cases even. We quote how the Bhagavatam mentions that the Guru, one of the qualities of the Guru is upasama ashrayam, which means his senses and mind are under control, or in other words, his or her humanity is balanced. Relatively, at least on some level again. So we should be very careful of not over absolutizing the relative side of the Guru to the point of, again, making it something that totally speaks about the, how to mention, like, if something is relative, and something is absolute, it's absolute. One is speaking about the other, but at the same time, we are speaking about the two of them as different things. So we shouldn't over-absolutize the relative, because sometimes that takes us to over-relativize the absolute side of the Guru as well. Like, my point is, to absolutize the relative will be to have an over-idealization of a Guru in aspects that you don't need him or her to be absolute or perfect, and it's okay. And if you have an over-idealization of your Guru, you may have an over-expectation of what's to come from that person. And if the Guru accepts that, he or she may have an over-expectation from what is to be coming from the disciple, who is having an over-expectation of him. So that creates a whole vicious circle and fantasy world in the relationship of the two, with a set of expectations which do not match reality, basically. Also, we mentioned how the opinions of the guru on relative issues, whatever social, political issues, are not necessarily to be taken as absolute. Also, that's not his realm of expertise, and it's okay. Again, they don't have to be perfect and absolute in every single area. And of course, because if not, we will feel, okay, the guru has to be correct in everything, he cannot be mistaken in anything. So if actually the guru is mistaken in something even relative, if the disciple does not allow him to accept that, he will think, no, it's my fault always. And that creates a whole shame, guilt trip, neurosis, paranoia, to say the least. Srila Prabhupada himself will say that overestimation of someone, guru included, is a form of blasphemy. So in the name of glorifying, praising Sri Guru, we should be careful not to indulge in this absolutization of the relative side, so to say. And we also concluded, despite mentioning the relative side of the humanity gives a hint of the inner world, in some cases, more exceptional ones, we may say, some personality is an avadut type of person with full love, but due to his avadutness, so to say, that person may externally on a social human level behave in ways that for us do not seem so functional and balanced. And in those cases, which again are quite exceptional, we should be careful not to judge the inner world of bhakti of that person because of what it appears to be external in our own eyes, basically. But even in those cases, if that person is a Prem, Bhakta, Avadut, whatever, and has full Adhikar in Bhakti, that person lacks Adhikar in terms of interacting with the world and other people. So to be a guru, even you can have Prem or whatever, but you need to have another Adhikar, which is humanity relatively in place, so you can interact with your disciples who are dealing with their own humanity, with the world. So that's an important point also. You may have Prem, you may appear to be socially dysfunctional. It's okay, you still have Prem, but probably you shouldn't be serving in the capacity of guru in those cases, because some interaction is required on some level. So if a guru sees that the disciple is, how to say, a guru has to, my point is, if the disciple is over-idealizing the guru, as we mentioned, the guru has to have the adhikar to deal with the lack of adhikar of his disciples who are over-idealizing him, whether by accepting, no, I'm not who you think you are, or allowing them to feel that because they need that at that stage, but the guru not buying into that, so to say. Again, not forcing the notion I have to be perfect in every way, or at least I have to seem to be perfect in every way. That's not necessary. So anyhow, some thoughts from last week's talk, and let's go to today's topic, which is again on leaving one's guru. We will be talking in this direction, so let's begin by introducing today's lecture with a few words explaining the title. So we will turn today to a little bit atypical scenario, or more and more typical, unfortunately, in our present times, but nonetheless more exception to the ideal rule, at least. Again, it's far from the ideal, but it happens. So we should, if something happens and we know it has happened, it continues happening, then we should talk about that, and so we know what to do, how to deal with that if we are going through that situation ourselves, or if we see that situation happening next to us, and how to understand that. So this atypical scenario may take two forms. One, having to reject one's guru for certain reasons that we will talk today, or being rejected by one's guru. That's a topic we will talk next week, not today, but it's somehow related one to another. So again, none of these two ideally should happen. I'm talking from the realm of idealism. Ideally, guru and disciple should grow together, each one in their own particular position, of course, with sincerity, with trust, with deep commitment to the devotional ideal. And none of them should think about leaving each other, so to say. But to be realistic, again, these forms of rejection have happened, especially the ones that we are addressing today, continue happening today on some degree, maybe on a greater degree than before. And Shastra speaks about that, especially about the situation of one having to leave one's guru. So if that's mentioned in Shastra, it means it can happen. It's considered by Shastra. Therefore, we are opening here today and next week the door for further conversation of some of these topics that sometimes remain more in uncharted territory, so to say, not that explored. So, of course, when we are talking about this, and please bear in mind this for today's lecture, next week's lecture, and probably always, that in Shastra speaks from a certain way, not only about Guru, about other things, but in many cases, Shastra will speak about something by considering not so much the exception to the rule, but the rule. The general rule, but also there are emergency rules or emergency situations. This is called a Pat Dharma in Sanskrit. So in an emergency, the general rule do not apply. That's how it works. I don't know. You have so many examples of that. No, I mean, you shouldn't, as a sannyasi, you shouldn't do certain things, but if the house is on fire, maybe you will have to do some things that you shouldn't normally do, whatever the case. So my point is, if a guru is engaged in immoral behavior, to give an example, doing something it's not expected from a guru, that's not a normal situation. That's not what a guru should be doing. That's not the general example, but the emergency case. It's an emergency. So therefore, all the statements that are in Shastra about guru, about the greatness of the guru, about this, how one should surrender to the guru, are not applicable in the emergency case. You follow my point? In those cases, there are another type of rules and criteria to be expressed. Why? Because again, these general statements in Shastra do not take into account a guru of immoral behavior. Shastra speaks about guru, considering the guru is bona fide, is doing everything properly. So on that basis, and Shastra glorifies Sri Guru. We already talked about that, no? Like Shastra speaks by assuming that the person who is a representative of the principle of Sri Guru is transparent medium, and Srila Prabhupada will say, and one is expected to fully surrender to that person who is fully representative. But as we mentioned, if that's not the case, at least on some level, then one should surrender proportionately to how much that person is representing the Swift Absolute in our lives, basically. So let's try to keep this point in mind when talking about these scenarios today and next class, which may be many of them, more the emergency rule than the general rule. And not only for these two classes, keep these scenarios in mind always. So let's go to the next section, where we will be talking about which are the qualities to be expected from both guru and disciple, to begin with. Before speaking about why to reject the guru or when to reject the guru, first a disciple should ask himself why to accept a guru. That's an important question that sometimes we do not ask that deeply. Maybe if you don't ask that question too deeply, eventually you may end up rejecting your guru, even for the wrong reasons, because you didn't accept him for the right reasons. So before asking when to reject the guru, why to reject the guru, first we should ask why to accept the guru. If we are planning to accept the guru, if you have accepted the guru, we have to continue asking that question repeatedly. Not only what to expect from a guru, but why am I looking for a guru? What's my motivation for having a guru? I mean, I have to have enough integrity and courage and introspection as to filter and question my own motivations. Not to go into neurosis, but just to be sincere enough. And that's one of the main symptoms of the disciple, basically. That's our main part in the equation as disciples, as the Bhagavatam says, Jignasa Shreya Uttamam. One of the main qualities of the disciple is he or she has to be sincerely inquiring into the ultimate good, into the highest truth. So sincere inquiry into the ultimate good, introspection, in other words. You cannot be a disciple without introspection. You have to have those qualities. If introspection is not there, again, you may end up accepting a guru for the wrong reasons. The guru may be totally bona fide, but you are not bona fide as a disciple. And even if you accepted a guru for the wrong reasons, even if you never rejected guru, in one sense, you have never accepted the guru. You follow the point? So it's not black and white. No? It seems you accepted, it seems you rejected. In some cases, we will see, appears that you are rejecting, but you are accepting the essence. In some cases, it appears you are accepting, but you have never accepted the essence, so you keep rejecting. And of course, not only we should take care of this ourselves as disciples, but the duty of the guru himself is to make sure that the disciple is looking for a guru for the right reasons. Maybe the disciple is not seeing those things, but the guru at least should see those things. That's why Sanatana Goswami insisted ideally a guru and disciple before accepting each other should live together for at least for a year. So they get to know each other and they get to know which are the motivations that both of them have for accepting each other. So the point is that the disciple, going back to us, and our responsibility in this equation has to have some introspection. Again, which is the original purpose of accepting a guru, even if we already accepted. Again, we can continue asking that. Was my original purpose spiritual? Was probably material? And what's my expectation at present? Because one thing is how everything began, how everything continues. Things may happen on the way. Sometimes there's people who originally come for sincere spiritual purposes, accepting the guru, but later, for whatever reasons, their priorities change. Or vice versa. Some people originally accept the guru without having a very clear picture about why to accept the guru, but eventually they learn why, and they become very serious and sincere about that. And so many things can happen in each one's journey. So anyhow, this was the first point that I want to make clear. Before asking how or when or why to reject the guru, first spend some time asking why to accept the guru. That may critically affect eventually if you end up rejecting or not, in which ways that can happen. So if somehow we were able to, to confirm that we are somehow sincere in our project as disciples, sincere as much as we can see in that our stage, and we want to accept the guru for the right reasons, then we are next to question or to look for which are the qualities that are to be exhibited by a guru for us to accept him. We have to know those things. And by having those qualities clear, the qualities to reject a guru will become clear naturally. Why? Because the qualities to reject the guru mostly have to do with not showing the qualities to accept the guru. You follow? The qualities that have to be there to accept the guru, the absence of those qualities will be the reason for one not to accept the guru or to reject the guru. So knowing one will take us to the other. As we will see, I will mention them. Of course, here I'm talking in very general terms. I'm not addressing any particular, specific, unique situation because each case has its own detail and uniqueness. So here just sharing a general template, and each one has to fill in with their own details. So regarding the qualities to be expected from the guru, unfortunately, again, sometimes disciples do not have a very clear idea of which are those qualities. Which is the qualification to be expected from a guru, which is the function to be performed by the guru in one's life. Many times prospective disciples mostly decide for a guru or another by social influence or without having too much ability to investigate the details, what Shastra says about that, which is the inner situation of the guru. Or they end up judging the adhikar of the guru by external things. Oh, he has so many disciples, he must be super advanced. Or he's Hindu, he has long beard, a nice turban, and sings nicely and knows many shlokas. Or whatever, he's man, he's not a woman. I mean, all externals. So sometimes we end up deciding, oh, he will be or she will be my guru by something external. Or indeed, even worse, sometimes the guru doesn't know which are the qualities to be expected from a guru. No, they do not have a very clear picture. What's their role, what's their attributes, what's their qualification that is required to fulfill the purpose of that service. Because remember, guru is a post, a role, a service, but requires qualification, as you may imagine. So again, some time should be spent in investigating these features, getting these features right, getting acquainted with what's expected from a guru. So let's share some of the main attributes expected from a guru, mentioned in Shastra, to have a clear picture. And this has been repeatedly mentioned in Shastra, and interestingly, the main verses that speak about this, all of them basically say the same thing, like show this like consensus to make the emphasis go in this direction. So there are 3 verses that come to my mind, which are 3 of the main ones that speak about the qualities of the guru and of the disciple at the same time. So one verse is from the Bhagavatam, Tasmat Gurum Prabhadita Jignasha Shriya Uttamam Brahmi Shabdi Parichanisnatam Brahmani Upasamasrayam. Another verse, which all of them are kind of parallel to each other, is the famous verse from the Gita, Tad Vidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadekshantite Gyanam Gyaninas Darshinaha. And then it's the 3rd verse quoted by our acharyas coming from the Mundaka Upanishad, which says, Tad Vigyanartam Sagurumiva Vigachet Samit Panir Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. So these are 3 different verses, but basically they say the same thing, which is an important point. There's some reason for that. And interestingly, in these 3 verses, first, the qualities of the disciple are mentioned. Like making the point, if you as a disciple are not in your place, guru will not be there. Even if you have the greatest personality in front, if you are not as a disciple in your place, you won't feel guru, you won't contact guru. So first, the qualities of the disciple are mentioned, mostly in 2 terms. One, as I mentioned, sincere inquiry, to be introspective in one's investigation of truth and which are my motivations, and surrender to the guru. If the guru is again proper representative and you are sincerely looking, when you meet your sincere inquiry and the proper representative meet, the natural way for the disciple to behave is surrender to that. So these are the 2 main qualities of the disciple in brief words. And the qualities of the guru mentioned in these 3 verses are to have knowledge of Shastra, of revelation, because the guru is expected to educate and instruct the disciple and clear the doubts based on scripture. So to have proper knowledge of Shastra, to have inner realization of that knowledge, not just lip knowledge. And the symptoms of having this knowledge and the realization of the knowledge will be, as we mentioned in Upasamasrayam, will be expressed in terms of controlled mind, controlled senses, balanced humanity, proper character, basically, behavior. Again, this is not only the only thing we can say about qualification for a guru, but to begin somewhere. Shastra is pounding this post 3 times in these 3 different verses. So the guru ideally should have this, again, qualities, knowledge, realization, and balanced humanity, at least on some level. Again, there will be levels of gurus. So all the things may happen on some level, but on some level that have to be there. Because again, the guru is a representative of Krishna. For in the life of a disciple, he has the responsibility to transfer not only knowledge, but realized knowledge of Sambandha, Videya, Prayojan to the heart of the disciple. So the guru must be qualified for that function. Remember, when the Shastra says guru, assumes the guru is qualified for that function. So these are the symptoms of a qualified guru, again. So I imagine now you apply the opposite to that, and then you will have the symptoms of an unqualified guru, which makes him or her worthy of being rejected, so to say. So let's go to the next section, where we will be speaking about reasons for rejecting one's guru. So again, bear in mind the qualities that we just mentioned. Why to accept a guru, what's expected from a guru, proper knowledge, proper insight, proper character and example. So in opposition to that, a guru who repeatedly, unconsciously, and consciously, not mere accidentally, deviates from these attributes, that person is fit to be rejected, so to say. So let me share two of the main verses from Shastra which describe, who address this point, when a guru is to be rejected, which are the qualities that make a guru rejectable, so to say. So the first verse comes from Mahabharata, it's basically the main verse generally quoted. So that it is said, it is ordained that a guru who is arrogant and conceited, who does not know what is to be done and what is to be avoided, and who has stumbled down the wrong path, is to be given up. So that's one verse from the Mahabharata. And there's a second verse, generally also quoted. It comes from the Guru Gita section in the Skanda Purana. It says, one should give up a guru who does not have knowledge of Shastra, who does not speak the truth, and who is a showman. If he does not know the means to liberation for himself, then how can he guide others? So these are a few examples, the main ones. And again, the pattern is again similar and corresponding to the qualities of guru we mentioned, but now in opposition to that, so to say. No? Remember, one of the main qualities of the guru was to have knowledge of Shastra. So here it is mentioned, one should reject the guru who cannot teach Shastra, because he doesn't know it, basically. If you don't know Shastra, you cannot teach Shastra. And this is what the verses that I mentioned say. The guru has to know Shastra. The Gita says the guru is jnani, has knowledge of Shastra. The Bhagavatam verse says the guru is sabdinishnatam, he's drenched in knowledge of revelation. And the Mundaka Upanishad said the guru is shrotriyam, he's familiar with Shruti, with the revealed knowledge. So a guru who is not that fits the quality for rejection, so to say. And then the second quality that we mentioned that the guru should have is realization of that knowledge. So here it is in this verse is saying one should reject the guru who does not have that quality. So they say, like in the way the guru who takes the wrong path, the guru who is a showman, the guru who is self-conceited, the guru who does not speak the truth, basically, who lies, and so on. Which again is the antithesis of what the verses say. The guru has to have inner realization. The Gita will say the guru is tattva-darshin. He's a seer of truth. The Bhagavatam say pari nishnatam upasramasran. He has inner realization. The Upanishad will say guru is brahmanishnam. He's fixed in the absolute. And these other examples say he's deviating, stumbling the wrong path, doesn't know what to do, what not to do, and so on. So it's clearly how the attributes of accepting a guru, creating the opposition of those attributes, makes someone to be rejected as a guru. And again, these different faults in a guru may take different shapes according to each particular case. And here just given a general template, so one should consider that accordingly. Srila Jiva Goswami, interestingly, in the Bhakti Sandarbha, Anucheda 238, he mentions that a guru, such a guru, the guru, he quotes this verse that I mentioned about when to reject the guru, and then he says, such a guru, quote-unquote guru, cannot be considered a Vaishnav since he lacks the character of a Vaishnav, he says. So who is a Vaishnav, who is not a Vaishnav? It's not about like external affiliation, but about exhibition of certain character. So if a guru lacks the character of a Vaishnav, he's not a Vaishnav. And Shastra says that a non-Vaishnav guru is to be rejected. Therefore, if a guru lacks the character of a Vaishnav, he's not a Vaishnav, and therefore he is to be rejected according to Shastra. Of course, when that said, when I speak about rejecting a guru, this is not a quick thing, a cheap thing. He's to be rejected. He doesn't know a verse, I have to reject it. He had this accidental fall down. No, I mean, again, to reject one's guru to begin with is the very last thing a disciple thinks about when accepting initially a guru. Of course, you are not even considering that possibility, and it's okay. So, and that's why, as we mentioned, a period of living together is recommended. So you can make sure that the person is well situated. Although in some cases the guru may be well situated, and in time, for whatever reason, something happens. That can also happen. But it is said that even in the case of some falling or deviation, we have mentioned that, it is not advised that the disciple has to immediately abandon one's guru. But one should first take some distance from the situation, respectful distance, try to pray sincerely, even if it's required to point those things, those faults that the guru is engaging in, the disciple has to point them to the guru in service, in the spirit of service to him. That's said by Narahari in his Krishna Bhajanamrita, famous section. He will say it, if the guru commits inappropriate acts, then one should privately confront him and reprimand him using logical conclusions. But one is not to give him up. In that initial moment, again, when the disciple is seeing some particular deviation, something that is clearly wrong, the disciple is not advised to be like the three monkeys covering eyes and ears and mouth, but should privately confront the guru. Okay, not confront in a rebel way, challenging way, but intimately, affectionately. That's confrontation, it's intimacy. Because you love the person, you will take the necessary measures. And even you may reprimand the guru, it's saying here. Again, intimately, as a show of affection. But not to give him up immediately. Of course, however, this instruction, again, applies in the beginning of a particular deviation. But if the guru remains like the three monkeys, in denial of his own deviations, in denial of accepting any help for that, after a long and painful insistence then and prayers, the disciples is then advised to abandon that person, because that person is not acting as a guru at all. So in connection to this particular scenario, also we should first consider some other things. Well, maybe if the guru actually rectifies himself after having committed a particular deviation, one should ask, but will be that guru capable of guiding me on the path of bhakti after rectifying himself? Because if your answer is no, actually no. So in that case, there's no even need to wait for him to be rectified. If you see that there's a lacking of that capacity, there's no need to have like hopes in something that may not happen, so to say. Or also, if something happened again, we have to consider, was that like a, how to say, slipped? No, like just a slip, or a planned action, premeditated thing. Now, because it was just an accident, again, there's no need to immediately run and look for another guru. We will think, okay, it was an accident, he's sincere, he's repenting, he's changing clearly. By Krishna's mercy, this won't happen again, hopefully. But again, if the person has deviated consciously, repeatedly, and is in denial of the situation and receiving help, then it's better to move on and look for some other shelter. Because even if that guru eventually rectifies, again, it's not guaranteed that the person will not relapse. Remember that Krishna says in the Gita that the material samskars are very powerful, and sometimes they force one to act even if one is unwilling to do certain things. So again, I'm just sharing general ideas, and each case will be very specific, but all these elements should be put in the scale, so to say. And of course, there are in-between scenarios. It's not just about continue with your guru, reject your guru, for example. An in-between scenario could be, and again, every particular situation is radically personal, but an in-between scenario could be like a guru engages in some misbehavior and the disciple is not abandoning the guru, but feels the need to complement his shelter with the Siksha guru. May needs to take it on some level a respectful distance from that Diksha guru, to give an example, not to reject, but to complement that connection with the Siksha guru. And it's okay. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami mentions this in Anucheda 238 of Bhakti Sandarbha. He mentioned that with the permission of one's guru, one can render service to other Vaishnavas, provided it doesn't conflict with the service of one's own guru, and this is also auspicious. So there is place to do so in a certain way. But also the point is, if my guru, to give an example, deviates and I ask permission not to leave him but to take shelter of someone else, and the guru say no, I forbid you, despite his own misbehavior, then that attitude further qualifies, quote unquote, that guru to be fully abandoned, so to say. And there are many verses in Shastra, very heavy, about having an improper guru and we as disciples remaining with such an improper guru, especially well knowing that the guru is not acting as a proper guru. I won't repeat those verses here, they are too much, but they are speaking about very heavy destinations that both of them attain by remaining together in basically a relationship of mutual cheating, so to say. Like making the point, this is not good, this is not real, this is not healthy. So something important also to understand in this connection, because a guru may say, again, you cannot go to anyone else, you remain with me, I'm your master, or I'm your owner. Ideally, that shouldn't happen. A guru should never think, I am the master or the owner of my disciple. There's place for the disciple to feel that in a natural way, hopefully from a healthy place. I belong to my Gurudev, he or she is my owner, master, whatever. But the guru shouldn't feel that himself or herself, like, oh, all of them belong to me and I'm their owner, their controller, or whatever. Again, the guru is not the master of the disciple. The guru is the servant of the disciple. The disciple is the servant of the guru, but the guru is the servant of the disciple in its own way. Because the guru is the servant of the disciple's shraddha. The guru is the servant of the heart of the disciple, of the faith of the disciple. So if the faith of a disciple is not fructifying, the guru, who is a servant of that faith, should make the necessary arrangement for that faith to continue growing, whether under his own guidance or under the guidance of another more qualified Vaishnava. A guru shouldn't have a problem with making those arrangements. Again, remember, the relationship between guru and disciple is always one of love and trust, which means it should be voluntary, it should be free, it should be based on mutual confidence, natural affection between both parties. It's never like an imposed thing, you belong to me or something like that. It's not forced in either direction, but ideally, as we mentioned, guru-disciple relationship should represent ideally the most spontaneous and beautiful of all relationships. But if we don't understand it properly, it will represent maybe the main source of trauma for many. So we should be careful how we deal with this GURU-TATTVA. So if we as disciples are in the midst of that situation, where again, we clearly see that our guru is not behaving properly and is not open to that, we should be sincere, whatever sincerity means for us at that stage. There are so many levels of that, but we should try to remain faithful to our values and principles and not sentimentally attached to a person, only to the person, even if the person, despite the character of the person, so to say. But we should be attached to the truth that person, the guru, should ideally embody. And if that embodiment is not there, then we should remain attached to the truth, not to the person without the truth, so to say. We shouldn't compromise, in other words, our integrity and our ideals in the name of submission, surrender, and so on. Not blind following, not blind rejection of the guru, but also not blind following. Now, if we need to reject the guru, it has to be for the right reasons. If you need to follow the guru, it has to be for the right reasons. Like Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say, paraphrasing one line of the Gita, sincerity is invincible. So if a person is fully sincere in purpose as much as he or she can in that stage, and that sincerity takes the person to see some clear fault in a guru, and that person, seeing the fault, acts with integrity by not denying what he is seeing, but thinking about that, acting upon that in a proper way, in acknowledgement of what's going on, then that's also an example of a type of sincerity that is invincible. It's not that you are an aparadi and you go to hell by seeing a fault in a guru. That sincerity is invincible. If there is sincerity, again, that will be invincible. Let me share a few words from Srila Siddhar Maharaj in this connection. We will be invoking him a few times today from his Sri Guru and his grace. He says as follows. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's final instruction is Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. And he paraphrases this instruction in his own words. If it's necessary to maintain the highest ideal, you must give up your friends. Surrender to me. I am the real purport of the scriptures. That's Srila Siddhar Maharaj's reading of that line. And then he continues saying, the highest kind of idealists give up their country, their family, their friends, and everything else, but they can't give up their ideal. I mean, of course, he's not saying you leave your family, but if that's necessary for the sake of the ideal, we will leave everything except for the ideal. The absolute consideration is Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Krishna says, give up everything, come to me directly. This is the revolutionary way. This is absolute. And then he concludes saying, and this is relative. Stick to your own clan, don't leave them. No? So again, this is the same point over and over again. No? Like we are very, we are inspired and pushed and suggested and instructed to remain loyal to our ideal, even if that takes the form of having to leave everything else. That's not what you think it should happen ideally, but if it has to happen, if I have to choose, I will always choose the ideal. And there are different examples in Shastra of people who reject, again, friends, family, even Guru, for the sake of their ideal. For example, in Rasa-lila, you have Vibhishan, who is the brother of Ravan. So he rejecting his relatives for the sake of his ideal. You have Prahlad Maharaj rejecting his father, in one sense, rejecting, of course. He's not, but for the sake of his ideal. Hiranyakasipu is not the main influence in Prahlad's life. No, in Devata, and this the story of Katwanga Maharaj, also is leaving the Devas for the sake of what's beyond the Devas, no? Or the Brahmanas, the wives of the Brahmanas and the Yajnapatnis rejecting their husbands for the sake of Krishna. Or in the case of today's topic, we have Bali Maharaj rejecting his guru, Sukracharya, for the sake of his ideal. So in connection to Bali Maharaj, to this example of Bali Maharaj and Srila Siddhar Maharaj that we just quoted, also there's these famous words that Srila Siddhar Maharaj said when he joined, or when he came to the Gaudiya Math, that he will say like, okay, if there is no truth in what they are preaching, even if they put me on a throne and worship me, I won't stay here. But however, if the truth is here, to be found here fully, even if they beat me every day, I won't leave. Of course, he's not promoting violence here, he's just making a point. So that's the same thing, no? If the truth is not here, I'm leaving. If the truth is here, I'm not leaving in any, whatever form it takes, basically. So this applied to today's topic. Again, this quote basically says, no matter what, we should serve the truth. No matter the form, the external shape of the circumstances. So if elements of truth are absent, or untruth is present, in other words, within the guru or within the behavior of the guru, in relationship with the disciple, then following Srila Siddhar Maharaj's idea is, I won't stay here. Even if they put me on a throne, even if they whatever, if there's no truth here, I cannot stay here. And again, one of the famous examples of this is Bali Maharaj. He has his guru, Sukracharya, and he was Bali Maharaj. He was on a throne, basically. But Sukracharya, as we know, when Vamandev appeared into the scene, Sukracharya advised, quote-unquote, Bali, do not give charity to him. Because he knew this is Vishnu cheating us, whatever. So he instructed Bali not to serve God, basically. And the guru is not expected to say that. So Bali Maharaj rejected his guru, And by doing that, he ended up being one of the 12 Mahajans, or the great personalities. Of course, in one sense, he didn't become a Mahajan by rejecting his guru, but he became a Mahajan by his unconditional addition, like attachment to truth. Sorry, that was a Spanish word that I thought in English sounded similar. So his attachment to truth made him a Mahajan, and his attachment to truth, which is the actual principle, took him to reject his guru. So his actual rejection of Sukracharya is just a byproduct of his attachment to truth, which made him a Mahajan. So Bali Maharaj ki jai. So some words in connection to this idea of reasons for rejecting one's guru. So now let's go to the next section, where we will be talking about some misunderstandings concerning rejecting one's guru. Because again, this is not an easy situation, an easy scenario, so different things may happen, and again, we said all these and it seems to be clear, but in some cases it's very difficult to ascertain, should I reject or not, and how and why, and it's very painful, again, and very overwhelming for a disciple to even start to awake to the realization and necessity, I may need to, something is going wrong here in the direction I expected it the least. So for a disciple to acknowledge my guru must be abandoned, that's a whole process, probably full of trauma as well. So we can totally understand I can totally understand the complexity of that, of those dynamics, and I can empathize with those situations. I mean, I myself have gone through that, and I have witnessed that very closely from other situations as well. So in such a confusing situation, also what can happen in connection to this section is our own minds, or sometimes the minds coming from the outer environment, may come with certain arguments not to reject the guru, when actually that's necessary. So misunderstandings about rejecting the guru. So let's, in this section, analyze some of them. Of course, some misunderstandings could be rejecting a real guru without any reason for rejecting that, which is an offense, guru aparad. But here we are talking about mostly when you need to reject the guru, but what pops into some minds not to do so. So a classical, to begin with, one of the examples, a classical one-liner could be, well, what do you gain from proving that your guru is wrong in whichever way? Sometimes that can come from our mind or from other minds. No? But what do you gain by that? No? Again, bordering this idea, if you're an aparadi, you're just seeing the mistakes, the relative side, fault finder, blah, blah, blah. So the tone of this proposition basically allows for only two options. One is, okay, continue following the guru. Even if the guru is insincere, is deviated, surrender. And you know something is wrong with just surrender, quote unquote surrender. That's not surrender. But that's one option in how you reply to that voice. Okay, I continue in a completely toxic way. Or second is, if you proceed to prove your guru wrong with a good intention, sometimes this idea will come. Again, you are an aparadi. You are attempting to criticize whatever. So, of course, it's aparadi if the guru is properly situated and you criticize something that is not there. But if you choose, as we mentioned, to abandon a guru for the wrong reasons, that's aparad, yeah. And it's important to make that clear. But if that's not the case, there's some deviation, you're seeing that's not aparad. We already talked about that, I think, in the second talk on GURU-TATTVA. But unfortunately, this argument of what do you gain from proving that your guru is wrong, this argument is never considering that there may be a right and wrong way to follow and a right and wrong way to reject, as we already mentioned. So seeing faults in someone is not something necessarily wrong. It can be, again, a symptom of sincerity and service. So we can see faults, not find faults, but see faults in the spirit of sincere commitment to the truth. And we can even see faults in a guru for the benefit of the person being criticized, even if it's one's own guru, or especially if it's one's own guru, because you are supposed to have a special affection for your guru. So if you see something that is to be addressed, you will point to that with a concern for the welfare of that person. And the guru is the person ideally disciple loves the most. So you follow my point, no? Because some cases you will think the opposite. I could never say that to my guru. But actually, if you love your guru and that's happening, that's the person you will tell that the most, because that's a sign of your affection. So, and again, and if the guru is showing something that is not correct, you as a disciple are not expected to follow that, to be chaste and submissive to that. So there is a place to disobey one's guru in Guru Seva. Although this idea may sound a little bit paradoxical and impossible to accept for some. It may sound even like hypocritical or contradictory. How you dare to say that you have disobeyed your guru in Guru Seva? But it's possible. Not only when the guru is not rightly situated, you disobey that for the sake of serving the truth, but sometimes even when the guru is rightly situated. Of course, I will give some examples. You need to understand that, because if not, it can create, you have to be very sincere and mature to understand this. Famous example with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Gaura-Kishora Das Babaji's first instruction to him was never go to Kolkata. And the first thing that Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta did was going to Kolkata. So some people ask him, like, what are you doing? Your guru told you to not do that, and it's the first thing you're doing. You're disobeying your guru. Of course, he said, what do you mean? I never went to Kolkata. I always remain on the lotus feet of my guru. So he made the point, Kolkata is a state of consciousness. Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. But he went there in service to his guru. Although externally it seemed he was disobeying him. On some level it seemed disobedience. On a deeper level is total loyalty and chastity. Or at the end of his life, Gaura-Kishora Das Babaji, it is said that he asked Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta, when I die, take my body, tie it to a bullock cart, and just move the cart and move my body through the whole floor of Navadvip, land of Navadvip. And Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta couldn't do that. So he disobeyed the instruction. But he, of course, again, from which place he couldn't do that? From a place of deep appreciation, how I will throw my divinely transcendental body of my Gurudev to the floor like that. So again, externally it seemed he was disobeying. Internally he was increasing his commitment with the essence. So there's a place to disobey one's guru in Guru Seva when he's rightly situated. What to speak when the guru is not rightly situated and he's acting or demanding from you. You lie, you compromise your integrity, you sacrifice your ideals. I cannot do that. In service to Sri Guru, to the principle of Sri Guru, I must disobey Vyasti Guru. You follow my point? I cannot obey an instruction that goes against what Sri Guru represents. And Vyasti Guru should be represented that agency, basically. So again, every time we say you have to serve the Guru, surrender to the guru, be humble and submissive, this can take many different shapes, as we can see. Even apparent shape of disobedience. And that will still be Guru Seva if the heart is in the right place. Because externally it may take different forms, but the inner spirit is always the same. Surrender, humility, but it may take different forms. So we should be very careful not to stereotype how surrender should look, how submission should look, because if we conclude that this is the only way it should be expressed, whatever doesn't fit that box ends up being stigmatized. Oh, you are not surrender, or you are not humble. Well, probably you are being more humble than those who are condemning that, in some cases at least. So again, especially in the case when a guru is clearly not giving proper example or even falling and deviating in a very delicate way, we are not expected to surrender and be submissive in the way of continuing in that situation, but surrender and being submissive in the way of taking proper action. Let me share a few words from Srila Sridhar Maharaj again, from Sri Guru and His Grace, which are very clear in this connection, which is the attitude to take in the midst of such disaster situation, so to say. He says, in the beginning, we may neglect some occasional problems. Some instances of these kinds of deviations may be ignored. When we start to see something is going wrong with my guru. But if we find that these are becoming more prevalent, then we must inspect the situation carefully, and we are to bring it to persons similar to my position. And after consultation, we can take the matter to higher sources and consult other acharyas who are reliable. So you can share that with peers, with seniors. When we find that what appeared to us first in a small way is real, injurious, and of a big magnitude, and that our spiritual master is going down, then we must act to save ourselves. We must try to take steps which may save us from that epidemic contamination. We must try to save ourselves. And we must also try to save others who might fall prey to the same exploitation as us. That must be done in all sincerity. There is the possibility. It is mentioned in the Shastras, and so many practical examples are also there. So, we must not make progress in a slumber, but we must go forward with our eyes always opened. Period. So I think that's very clear. So whenever we find something's going wrong, we have to be open to that, wait, but if that becomes apparent, we start to talk with peers, with seniors. Eventually, we must need to save ourselves, and even he said we have to save others from that situation. Epidemic contamination, he will mention. But with all sincerity, again, not as an excuse to just criticize, demonize, or anything, but proper sincerity has to be in place. And in this way, we should progress. He will say, not in a slumber, but with eyes wide open. So Srila Srinivas is very clearly making this point. Not blind following, not blind rejection, everything done with proper sincerity and open eyes. So let's go to another misunderstanding regarding rejection, rejecting one's guru, which, as we mentioned, sometimes it is made, we mentioned that's class, the guru makes a mistake, overlook that, he's the guru, concentrate on the absolute side, transcendental side, the relative side is the relative side, and so on. And on top of that, okay, the guru makes a mistake, don't look at that, but when disciples makes a mistake, in those cases, sometimes it is said that all the responsibility should befall on upon the disciple. Which again creates this shame and guilt trips, basically. But in one sense, it should be the opposite. Instead of, no, every mistake of the guru is relative, all mistakes are in the disciple. In one sense, it should be the opposite, in the sense of, if the guru is so advanced and high, as ideally should be, in that case, any mistake should not be overlooked. In that, if some mistake comes, especially delicate mistakes, that shouldn't be overlooked, but carefully consider because of the consequences that may have on the students of the guru. The higher you are, basically, the more any of your actions will affect more people strongly. So the more responsible you are in that position in relation to what you do. But if a disciple makes a mistake, well, it's a disciple. No, it's not the guru, so to say. It's more normal and expected, like the father and the child. The child will do some nonsense that the father hopefully is not doing. So a disciple may make some mistakes, and it's, again, more normal and expected that such a thing will happen. So we shouldn't make of that something out of that more than what it is, and overload the disciple with guilt and shame. Or what to speak, of course, of cases like the guru's rejecting a disciple for a so-called mistake that the disciple never committed, all the while the guru is overlooking big mistakes that he himself is committing. But that's another topic. That's next class of guru rejecting the disciple. So, of course, when I'm saying this, that, okay, a disciple can commit a mistake, with this I'm not over-justifying a disciple's mistake. Oh, we can commit mistakes, we are the disciples, it's okay. or to overjudge if a guru makes one mistake, or let's overjudge his inner standing by that single mistake. We are not saying that, but just let's try to bring some balance to a discussion that many times is out of balance, to be honest. And again, that many times gives place to over demanding on the disciple, guilt and shame on the shoulders of the student, or even ostracizing and shunning, and many times gives place to complacency and abuse on the part of so-called gurus and or his loyal followers, so to say. No? Another typical misunderstanding in these scenarios that we already also mentioned is that sometimes say, okay, a guru fell down, whatever that means, or deviated, and some will say he was never a guru. If the guru fell, he was never a guru. And probably those who say that, who resort to that absolutization, so to say, he was never a guru, are those who probably in the beginning were already absolutizing everything in the other direction. The guru is everything, he can never be mistaken, he's always perfect and absolute. And suddenly I realized he's mistaken. So he was everything, now he's nothing. He was never a guru. But these two are extremes, or two sides of the same coin. And actually, we need a middle point in this connection. Of course, there will be superlative gurus and superlative cases of great Uttam Bhagavatas. But in many cases, we will have gurus who commit mistakes, but it doesn't mean that they never are gurus, or they were fake from day one, or whatever. And again, when we say some gurus will be great personalities, topmost personalities, generally, that's more the exception than the rule. Uttam Mahabhagavatas are not that easily available, so to say. Like when Krishna is saying in the Gita, Manushanam sahasrasu katsit yatati sidaye yatatamapi sidanam katsimbam beti tattvataha. Among many people, a few look for the truth. Among those, a few find it. Among those, a few, and so on. So we could make the same version of that verse in relation to the guru. Like from most of the people, there will be a few who will be gurus. From most of those who present themselves like gurus, most will be false. It's full of false gurus in this world. From those who are genuine gurus, most of them won't be Uttam Bhagavatas. And from most of those who are Uttam Bhagavatas, probably most of them we will never know, we will never meet, because many of them, due to their advancement, they have so much humility and they feel so much insignificant that they are seeing Krishna everywhere and Guru everywhere. So that takes them into extremely situation where they will never present themselves as gurus, something like that. And not only we may never find those Uttam Mahabhagavatas, and hopefully you don't feel that I'm not giving hope you by saying this, just being realistic. But not only you may never meet too many of those Uttam Mahabhagavatas, an exception to the rule, but probably also you may not need to have an Uttam Mahabhagavat guru necessarily. We may not need the highest person on the whole planet as our guru necessarily, as some devotees think they need, or some devotees think they have, and they promote as such. My guru is the best person on earth, or whatever. Or even if you get to have the highest Uttam Mahabhagavat of the planet as your guru, that doesn't guarantee that you are taking full advantage of that association. His position is not speaking about your situation necessarily. Which capacity do you have to deal with someone so advanced? And how willing we are to accept that our guru may not be an Uttam Mahabhagavat, and that probably we don't need, again, the most advanced person in the particular stage we may be in now. So an example in this connection could be given, like for example, a student may have a neophyte student may have a teacher who is relatively neophyte as well. It's not that advanced, but it's a little bit more advanced than the student. And that's enough for the student. It's okay. The student doesn't feel, I need you to be a Uttam Mahabhagavat. And eventually when the student will advance to the point that the guru was originally, well, that student may need another more advanced teacher to complement, or if that not so advanced teacher was sincere, naturally when the student gets to the situation where the guru was originally, the guru for sure will be in a higher situation at this point already. So in that way, basically, the guru will be in the situation that the student requires the guru to be for him to continue being his guru. So from those places, both guru and student will continue accompanying each other and advancing together, so to say, in their respective, of course, situations and positions, one as guru, one as a disciple. So that's possible also. Again, let's be realistic and not just try to impose a very forced scenario there. So some thoughts about this idea of possible misconceptions are about rejecting one's guru. Let's go to a last section before concluding, where we will be speaking about the Rasa-lila on leaving one's guru. So we will establish some connections here. You may wonder what? What's going on? And we already talked about this on the class of Rasa-lila that we gave in last Kartik. So that some points will be extracted from there. So let's draw some teaching from this. Rasa-lila, the ultimate lila, the zenith lila for us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, so to say. Mostly in relation to how to remain chaste, to the absolute side of our search, so to say. Our search of truth, no matter what. We have already talked about this a little bit. And how to act and how to feel, so to say, when Krishna seemed to disappear in our lives, from our lives, when in relation to how he used to come to us through a particular person, because that was our version of Krishna, so to say. And what happens when that particular agent, at present, no longer represents Krishna. So where is Krishna? How to act ourselves in that connection? So as we know in the Rasa-lila, the gopis, after being called by Krishna's flute call, clarion call, the gopis sort out many obstacles and the dead of the night to reach him, and finally they arrive to Krishna's feet, and Krishna sees the gopis and is kind of surprised and asks them, like, what are you doing here? Why you're here in the night? I'm just one boy and you are so many women. What are we doing here? No? And then he seems to send them back home, although the Sanskrit lends itself to be interpreted as he's telling them just that you have no place to stay but with me, or the opposite of that. So again, love moves like a snake, as we mentioned. No? Hari Bhagati Premnashtra Bhavakutila. It's not clear, it's unexpected, it's crooked. So the gopis in this moment are in a liminal space. Like, what's going on here? What to do? How to? They're inhabiting uncertainty. Krishna called us, we came, now he's telling us to return. So they are uncertain about what's going on, but at the same time they have a very deep certainty in place, which is their love for Krishna. There's no doubt about that. So that certainty they have is what allows them to go through the uncertainty that Krishna is bringing forth. And Krishna brings forth the uncertainty to increase their certainty, basically. And that takes them, the gopis, to debate with Krishna when he's sending them back. And they start to argue with him in the section called Pranaya Gita. And they defeat Krishna's arguments, basically. They win the debate against God, so to say. And that's not for the atheists. No, let's win the debate about God. So after the gopis defeating Krishna, the first edition, so to say, of the Rasa-lila begins, the first part. They start to dance and sing and celebrate. So as we see at this point already, different layers of complexity are integrated as the narrative progresses. No? He calls, they come, what's going on, go back, they defeat, okay, we begin. So Krishna behaves unexpectedly, but the gopis adjust to that unexpected scenario and reply accordingly. So again, try to follow the idea. When saying Krishna here, try to find the parallel with the Guru, being the representative of Krishna in our lives and sometimes behaving unexpectedly, and we have to act accordingly and adjust to that so our ideal is not compromised, basically. So when Krishna, going back for a minute, sends the gopis back to their homes, again, the gopis are presented with a further layer of testing. Because again, the gopis reached Krishna's flute call. They reached the rasa dance arena, so to say. But Krishna says things, okay, let's see how much you want to participate in Rasa-lila. Maybe you are still in the rasa arena, but doesn't mean you are still in Rasa-lila. So that's when he sends them back. Let's see if you really want to stay here and be part of this So with his own approval, he's sending them back. So you have Krishna's blessing, so to say. So here the gopis have a good reason to return, because Krishna himself is telling them to do so. I will obey you, Krishna. Again, if the guru is telling you to do something, you're supposed to obey your guru. But what if the guru is telling you to do something that goes against your ideal? You shouldn't obey. You should debate and defeat, as we mentioned before. Confront and point the mistake. So the gopis disobeyed Krishna. They didn't go back home, because that going back home went against their ideal of dedication. So I cannot do that, even if God tells me that. That will compromise my commitments in service. That's what the gopis thought. So again, similarly, you follow the parallel. If the guru says or does something which goes against the standard of dedication, the standard of integrity that is to be expected coming from a representative of God, the disciple in those cases is invited not to obey, but to take, as we mentioned, at least some distance, pray, be introspective, think, okay, Krishna is testing my sincerity in this moment through this particular situation, so what to do? And the disciple will pray and behave accordingly. So again, in other words, the student is not expected to follow those instructions or that example from the guru which go against what is supposed to be revealed by Sri Guru. And here we should make a brief clarification, because someone may, quote things like Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta say you should go to your guru with a no-return ticket. So what is this thing that disobeying or not surrendering? No return ticket. But again, surrender to the guru with no return ticket, that is of course in consideration again that the guru is fully representing Sri Guru. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta spoke from that place, like Shastra speaks about guru. He behaves accordingly, you reciprocate accordingly. So if the guru fully represents the principle of divine revelation, you are to surrender to that. In other words, a disciple surrenders not to a person, but to a principle that is represented by a person, the principle of divine revelation, which again comes through our life generally through a person. So we surrender to a person in that context, to the principle. So the surrender is not to someone, but to something, if you want to put it like that. To something that flows through someone. So you surrender to that someone because of that something, so to say. We surrender to that principle, to that ideal, to that commitment, in service of that ideal. And the gopis are showing that here again. They are surrendered to that ideal, even if it takes to debate Krishna and defeat him. And of course, the ideal of surrender that we are talking about is ongoing, so it's continuing and increasing forever. So again, if in some cases the principle of the guru's representation is contradicted by the vyasti, the representative, the disciple is not expected to surrender in that case. It won't be healthy. It's not surrender, it's anti-surrender. That so-called surrender actually goes against the very principle of surrender. That becomes what Rupa Goswami called niyama graha, or doing something without the proper reasons for doing that. So when we say surrender to a guru with a no-return ticket, like Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta will say, yeah, it means there is no return from that journey of surrender. It's not something in relation to a person, to an institution. It's about the commitment with the journey, the commitment with the ideal. There's no return in the sense that I'm not going backwards in my commitment with the truth, even if that takes to disobey my guru. You follow? No matter what form that takes, well, no matter what's the price to pay, and the consequences of always choosing the truth, there's no return ticket in that sense. And that's for the gopis the idea. Now the gopis showed that here. No return ticket, no return back home. Krishna is telling me, go back home. Gopis is saying, our homes are no longer our homes. This is home, here with you. So we are in home. In that sense, they are not going back. And of course, if we are sincere to that principle, even if it takes the form of having to abandon one's guru, Krishna will continue calling us, so to say. Like the gopis here, they are disobeying Krishna, but Krishna is not abandoning them. No, like, you disobey me, I reject you. Krishna is more and more attracted by that. And Krishna will continue calling us, as we mentioned, but not necessarily calling us always in the same way. Which is an important point to make here also in connection to the Rasa-lila and the flute playing. The call of Krishna, so to say. So Krishna will be calling us in different stages in our life in different ways. So we as disciples shouldn't be too attached to the form of the call, to the sound of the flute, how the note, which note will that be, but to the substance of the call, not to the form of the call. And we see how in Rasa-lila Krishna is doing that. He's playing the flute, then he's sending the gopis back. The gopis defeat him, then he starts to play the flute again during the Rasa-lila and dancing with them. Then he disappears from Rasa-lila. Then the gopis search for Krishna, call for Krishna. Then Krishna reappears. Then Rasa-lila restarts. Then Krishna plays his flute again. And then Rasa-lila attains the consummation point. But Krishna plays the flute at different moments in different ways, with different things happening in between. So the point is the flute won't sound always the same. And now won't sound always coming from the same place or in the same form, with the same shape, or from the same direction. So we should be willing, again, to leave everything behind like the gopis are doing and just run to the flute call wherever it comes from, however it comes from, however it chooses to come for us today. So when I'm saying for us, again, I'm also meaning Krishna's call will be not only different for each person, but it will be different for ourselves in different stages of our journey. The call will be different. It's the same, but it's different. You follow my point? No? A classical example also is that, but again, this is a nice point. Krishna will be playing the flute. He plays the same flute, the same note, but each one will hear also it differently. That's also important to and each one is responding to the call differently, but all of them are doing it properly. No? So a classical example is when Srila Prabhupada left his world and some issues were there in ISKCON, as we know. Some of his disciples sincerely hear Krishna's flute call in the direction of taking shelter in Srila Sridhar Maharaj or in other sadhus. And others heard the flute call also equally sincerely in the direction of staying in the institution in ISKCON and trying to prove the situation there. And all of them were right, that's my point. The flute call was the same, the reply to the same situation, taking different shapes. So when Prabhupada was about to leave his body and said, I want to do parikram in Govardhan with a bullock cart. And some were totally opposed to that, feeling he will die, his health is so fragile. And some others, well, his last wish, we have to please him. So different replies to the same flute call, so to say. And all of them were sincere. So Krishna was enjoying that diversity of opinion. So again, if we are sincere, all those different responses will be correct. There's not single absolute flute call for everyone, that everyone is expected to reply in the same way. Again, Krishna played the same flute note for the gopis in the Rasa-lila, but each gopi heard the flute call differently. In fact, our Acharya said that each gopi heard their own name included in the sound of the flute, like a guided missile or something. That's radical personalism. And Krishna plays one note, but it reaches each one in a ultra personalized way. Your name included there, but it's the same note. Now, indeed, other Brajavasis did not even, apart from the gopis, did not even heard the call at all. So it's very specific how it reaches each person. So what constitutes a flute call for some is not even heard by others. And some others will hear another call that the other ones are not hearing. And it's okay. We should bear that in mind and properly honor that. Surrendering to the flute call, whatever it sounds, however it sounds, and not from the place where it sounds or how it was used to sound in the past, what's the shape it's taking. And this is in connection again to the Guru and our situation with the Guru in cases like today's, which the flute call may come from another direction, in another shape. And of course, an important clarification is that also we sometimes may be too certain that we are following Krishna's flute call, while actually we are remaining in our comfort zone and compromising our identity. That can happen. So we should go through some litmus test not to end up cheating ourselves in the name of the flute call. I'm following the flute call because I remain in this situation. That's what Krishna wants, and probably he wants you to move forward. So we shouldn't cheat ourselves in this way. Of course, we should either be in rebels without a cause, but if there is a cause, a noble cause, a call to a noble ideal, we must be willing to risk everything in the pursuit of our ideals. But again, we should understand that while we can either reject, as we mentioned, we can reject a cause or a call for the right reasons, and we can reject it for the wrong reasons. We can also join or reject anything else, Guru, for the right reason, for the wrong reasons. As we mentioned in the beginning of the series, we can remain in Gaudiya Vaishnavism for the wrong reasons. But we should learn to remain as Gaudiya Vaishnava for the right reasons. So it's not a black and white issue as we may think. No? Krishna, again, doesn't play one note, or if he plays one note, it's not in the same way. So it's not that if a guru is deviating and you stay there, that may not be good. But a guru may not be deviating, but you are accepting him from the wrong place. That may not be good either. You may be rejecting for the wrong reasons. So many possibilities are there. So again, just to conclude the flute call analogy, we may be hearing the flute call in one direction, and again, every other person may not be hearing that flute call. But if we are genuinely calling that direction, we should go there, and that's okay. And that should be not only okay, but that should be properly honored and venerated, not only our flute call, but everyone else's flute call, and learn to coexist with that diversity of hearing of the call, so to say. No, unity in diversity, individuation, radical personalism, and so on. Anyhow, some words regarding Rasa-lila, the flute call, and what to do in this situation. Let's conclude with a few words, and we are over today. So as we mentioned, we can feel, okay, Krishna is manifesting, just to wrap up today's presentation, Krishna's coming to my life through a person, a guru. He's manifesting in my life, and I'm surrendering to that person, and everything seems to work for some time. But what happens if at some point we feel, again, that person is no longer representing Krishna? Are we wrong by feeling that, or we were wrong from the day one to accepting that, or probably there was no wrong at all, it's just happened to happen now? So again, if we were sincere, it was okay. It had to happen in that particular way. That in the beginning someone represented Krishna for us. We felt that representation. We surrendered to that. That was what it had to happen. But eventually that person, for one reason or another, stopped representing Krishna, and we don't feel surrendering in that direction anymore. There is place for that, as we are mentioning. And not going to either of these extremes, to just continue blindly or to whatever, reject without any type of gratefulness. The middle point is what balances the equation, basically. No? Even if I have to eventually abandon someone who at some time helped me, I will remain appreciative and grateful from whatever I receive from that person. But again, that doesn't mean that I stop seeing the current deviations that may be there. As we said the other day, always forgive, never forget. So we have to be willing to forgive and be grateful, but not to be blind and forget things that happened or are happening. So if I force myself to only see the good thing always, I become extremely naive, and that lends itself to different forms of abuse. But if I over-justify the bad thing in someone and expand that, I became full of ungratefulness and resentment and vengeful spirit. So again, middle point always, even if in some point we need to take a distance from the person who was our guru. So if we have gone through a situation like that, or if we are going through a situation like that, or if we may be going eventually, or we know of someone going through that, we shouldn't be ashamed of going through a situation like that. Again, I'm not proposing that. Let's go to a situation like that. But if that happens to be the case, don't be ashamed of having gone through one guru or two gurus or whatever the case. But if you were not sincere, be ashamed of not being sincere. But if you were sincere, don't be ashamed of whatever your sincerity took you through. Instead, remain grateful, humble, sober, sincere, and continue pursuing the truth with that sincerity, upgraded, hopefully, learning from the past and continuing. Maybe we may have to, that's our journey. We may have to go through different gurus, through different groups, in one lifetime, in many lifetimes, till we reach our ultimate goal. That was at one point made clear in the very first book of our Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar's journey. In the words of Srila Siddhar Maharaj, Gopakumar went through different religious conceptions and paramparas, even, he will say. And every time he met one of those, he will think, oh, this is the best. And eventually, his own sincere inquiry took him one step further here and there, and eventually to his desired goal in Braj. So that's in the very first book of our Sampradaya, which clearly sets the precedent. This can happen. Your journey toward your ultimate goal may include different other paramparas, gurus, journeys, or whatever. So again, don't be discouraged or ashamed because of that. If we understand and accept the principle of guru with sincerity and from the right place, again, that same principle will always continue granting us all the blessings that we need, that we will be needing, even more than what we need, so to say. There's an abundance of unconditional love and grace. But of course, if the same principle of guru is not properly addressed, this same tattva, which is misrepresented or misunderstood, out of proper context, whatever, that same tattva can become, in many cases, the cause of our greatest afflictions or greatest trauma in our life, if not properly addressed and understood. So in that spirit, trying to hopefully avoid any unnecessary affliction, something that we can avoid, in that spirit, trying to save us, whatever, for avoidable confusion, is that we have shared today's words and that we are sharing these words in connection to GURU-TATTVA, hoping to provide some clear understanding about how to understand these complex scenarios, like the ones we have addressed today, and like the ones we are addressing throughout this series. So, some words regarding today about abandoning one's guru. We'll conclude here, and there's a little homework for those who will like, which will be try to reflect on the spirit of searching for truth, no matter what, as we mentioned, as real courage and surrender, and try to notice any possible misconceptions you may have had about this, about what it means to surrender, what it means to search for truth. So next Tuesday we will continue with the 5th part of this series on GURU-TATTVA. Again, we will see another part, similar part from the other side of this equation. Instead of abandoning one's guru, we'll be speaking about on being rejected by one's guru. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you next Monday very happy, blessed Sri Gaur Purnim, appearance day of Sriman Mahaprabhu. So we will see the next day after Gaur Purnim. So Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai. And we will have a class on that day, on Monday, sorry. So those who would like to connect, we will be sharing the flyer these days. So please check that, and you're invited to join us on that same Monday, mid-morning EST time. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Gaudiya Sampradaya ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Sri Guru-TATTVA ki jai. Gaur Premananda Haribo Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Hari Hari.